Good afternoon, Sticky Learning Lunches. Just making sure we've got a screen share on there. Welcome to today's session. Yes, I'm not wearing a white shirt. It's Thursday. Just going to give it a few seconds while we wait for the last people to arrive in the room. If anyone's got any opinions about the shirt today, I'm more than happy to hear them. What do you think? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 terrible, 10 phenomenal. Happy. Let's go with the ratings on that just while we're waiting for everyone else to turn up. I say that.
It's certainly better than the sound I'm supporting today.
8.5. Thank you, Colin. I'll take that and run with it.
9 for me. Thanks, Colin.
If only. So let's make sure we're setting everyone up for success. First things first, as always, let's get the mobile phones up. Let's get the little aeroplane lit. Zero out the distraction, 100% attention. Also making sure we've got a drink. Let's make sure we're staying hydrated. We're in the 30s here in the south. It's getting warm. Let's make sure we're looking after ourselves, keep ourselves hydrated and keep the brain lubricated. Also, fresh sheet, fresh thinking. Get yourself a blank page. Make sure at the top of that you've written keepers. And these are the things you want to remember and remind yourself about when you reread them so you can reignite that thinking and really make this learning stick. It's the end of the week for us and the sticky learning. Before we go any further, and before we go into the introductions and get the session rolling as well, if you have not signed up for Monday's session, which is the last one of the 73% funnel, now is the time to do that. We'll get a link into the chat box there. You can click through there and sign up for Monday's session. We've also got Tuesday's session. We're going to move into the leadership coaching model EVOC, which I've designed. It's all going to be about self-evaluation and getting really deep on who you are, what you bring, and how you develop yourself as a leader as we move through the course of next week as well. So if you haven't already signed up, now is the time to do that. We are on. Let's do this. Welcome to today's Sticky Learning Lunch with me, Nathan Simmons, Senior Leadership Coach and Trainer for MBM, Making Business Matter, home of Sticky Learning. And we are the leadership development and soft skills provider to the grocery and manufacturing industry. The idea of these sessions is to give you a 20 to 30 minute micro learn that's going to help you be the best version of you in what you do right now, and also preparing you to go back to the brave new world, that whatever that might be, as we move into the future. What are we covering today, Andy?
Afternoon, Nathan. Today we are covering landing those opportunities in stores. So it builds, as this funnel continually does, our targets, our shoppers, our stores, our insights and recommendations, selling it through to landing it. So today's about landing it. It's about that last 100 yards and ensuring that all that time and effort and analysis we put in actually hits the shelves and hits the shelves right. So for me, landing opportunities in store, why the funnel flows, is largely about preparation. What we're trying to ensure happens is that those recommendations that you make to the buyers, that you've sold to the buyers, don't just look good on paper, that they actually can work in store, and then giving them sustainability for the future. So getting into this then. There are broadly two groups of people that work for supermarkets, those that work in the offices and those that work in stores. Yes, of course, there's some other areas, but broadly speaking, those two groups of people. This is really about bridging that gap between those particular areas. Talked about it as the last 100 yards. It's the difference between ideas generated and where they are implemented. So I'm going to start with a quick story. One of my colleagues may be in this afternoon. This story is actually about him. So many years ago, and he'd probably tell us it was about 20, I think the reality was it was probably maybe 30 or 40 years ago, he was an up-and-coming frozen foods buyer. And that buying department at this particular supermarket were trying everything to drive sales. They would draft in suppliers, they would go through all the analysis, through all the SKU level, store level, by week analysis, and it was all with a view to try and getting availability sorted in frozen foods. Hundreds of spreadsheets, lots of analysis, hours spent on it, nothing was improving. So my colleague himself decided, you know what, maybe I need to get out to stores. So he did, out of his desk, off to stores. And he spent some time working in stores, spent a few days observing what colleagues were doing. He spent a few days helping colleagues in store, putting stuff into the shelf. A couple of weeks later, he pulled and gathered the buying team back together. What he then did was place 50 pairs of gloves down on the table and said, there's our issue. It doesn't matter how much analysis we do. It doesn't matter how many recommendations we come up with. It's about this. And everyone kind of went, gloves? What do you mean? It's about gloves. What he then went on to explain was that the insight he got from working in the stores, well, frozen food was cold. And so because frozen food was cold, everyone in store avoided filling or replenishing that particular part of the store. By providing gloves to the stores right across the estate, they were able to increase availability. So they made it just that little bit easier for people to go, do you know what, we're going to pick up those cold cardboard boxes, open it, put it on the shelf, just make life that little bit easier. The point of that really about closing the gap between what we see behind our screens and within our spreadsheets and bits of paper to what actually happens in true reality. So finding your gloves is the kind of, or the equivalent of, is my real challenge to you for this afternoon. Find those gloves, close that gap between the analysis that you do and the opportunities that you're recommending. Making sense, Nathan?
Absolutely, and it's the real life stuff. What you see on your computer screen and from where you're sitting is completely different to the reality inside a store. Now, you're in geographically, you may be 20, 30, 150 miles away from that location. So you have no idea actually what's going on in the head of the individuals that are supporting you make those opportunities land. You have to be there.
Yeah. I'm going to share another little model, why not? We looked at the staircase the other day. This is another staircase. I seem to like staircases and three-letter acronyms this week. This is effectively the staircase of learning. Some of you may well be familiar with it, but actually I think it works really well for this particular topic as well. Let me draw this up. Start these two areas here. Not a big fan of this word, but it'll make sense. Unconscious incompetence. It's the things that we don't know. And this is typically, or can typically be, the area that some category managers tend to reside in. They don't know what they don't know. Sometimes getting out to store can help that. I often think about this as my 8-year-old. She doesn't know she can't drive. She sees Daddy get in the car, do some stuff like this, do some stuff like this, move his hands in the car, get from A to B. She has no idea she couldn't jump in that seat and do it. Over time, we move then into conscious incompetence. So you start to become aware of the things that you know you can't do. Sometimes just getting out to store and going, you know what, hadn't appreciated that. Love's example. It's a great place to start. So for me, this was my son probably a few years ago when he started asking these questions. He was getting slightly closer to taking that first driving lesson, and he started asking, put your feet up so you don't know that. What's that button for? What's that lever do? How are you getting the car to do that thing? And he moved from, I don't know, I can't do it, through to, my God, I know, I can't actually do that. I'm going to need some lessons. Absolutely. He then starts taking some lessons and he moves into conscious competence. He is now aware he can do it. Over time, and if to ask anyone in the room who's done a drive recently and to ask you how many gear changes you make, providing you've got a manual car, you're not going to know because you're doing that stuff unconsciously. So you then move into unconscious competence. And it's about taking our category managers or ourselves on this journey through, don't know what I don't know, to now I know what I don't know, through to now I can do it, and then finally making this stuff just automatic. So we're not just sitting behind spreadsheets, we're spending some time in store, and we're now unconsciously competent on that new level of knowledge that we've got. There's a little bit of recycling that typically happens up here. I guess sticking with our driving analogy, it's maybe moving from a manual car to an automatic or vice versa. We have a little bit of relearning to do. That's cool. That's all part of continuous improvement. The important thing is to move that way up our staircase. Went at pace there. Nathan, making sense? Thoughts on that?
Absolutely. You know, it's something that we teach at Sticky Learning, because when you go through the 4 stages of learning, depending what title this was given when you've learned it, it's easy for us to go consciously competent, unconsciously competent, and then we just sit there doing this kind of certain things which almost have a level of security and certainty to them. And actually, it's getting away from your desk and going doing the things that aren't common, and going back and acknowledging, well, actually, I am consciously incompetent. I now know what I don't know, and enjoying that process of discomfort that comes with that, admitting that you don't know it. That feels uncomfortable. You feel stupid. You feel confused. But actually, confusion is a chemical reaction happening in your brain, which happens when you're consciously incompetent. So in order to go up that competency ladder, to improve your learning, you have to go through that experience. And that means going into a store, speaking to a new store manager, speaking to the people that are handling your goods, speaking to the customers. And if that's not normal for you, get used to it, because that's the stuff that's going to move this for you.
Absolutely, and that leads perfectly onto my suggestion. I think it's exactly doing that. Speak to your buyer, speak to your local supermarket store manager. You sometimes need to get permission to do that. You can't just rock up in store and start speaking to colleagues or customers. Get that permission appropriately, and then coming back to where we were the other day, I'm talking about hippos or hypotheses. Before you go in, consider yourself some. Start those with I believe. I believe that I can drive more sales by better understanding the store ordering system, or I believe I can learn 3 pieces of new product development by replenishing my category for half a day. I believe I can learn some stuff about my category by replenishing another category in the store. And the list goes on, considering around how does the store manage waste, how do they manage arrivals, how do they take those arrivals to restocking, what can we do to help visibility of new products, or stores locate certain products. There's a whole host, massive list. Consider the ones that are right and relevant for you. Start with I believe that, and then go in stores and start proving or disproving them. I think it's super powerful and will just help ensure that the opportunities that you make that are great on paper land in store and are there for the foreseeable future, driving sales and profit.
Excellent, excellent. So where does this take us to next then? Once we start getting into the superstores and we're looking at some of these things, rightly so. I'm very much kind of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. So I'm glad you highlighted there to go and get permissions to go and have these conversations, because I would have already been doing them. So where does an individual go from there kind of to move these hypotheses and take themselves into the next steps?
I think that's it. These learning opportunities are largely about preparation. We've made the recommendation people have bought into it. But actually some of this stuff, and I said this funnel isn't about start, stop, start, stop, all the way down. There's this kind of Venn diagram type overlap. Some of this stuff needs to happen first. You don't want to make a recommendation that ultimately is just going to fall over the day after it launches. So part of this stuff maybe happen further up the funnel as you're developing products and developing recommendations. Moreover, it has with everything around category management for today. It's a business as usual thing, not something you dip into once every few months. You should be out there visiting stores on a daily and weekly, not necessarily daily, but maybe a weekly basis. And actually the reality is we're doing that when we're doing our normal weekly shops, albeit slightly caveated with our current new situation. Keeping yourself living and breathing, keeping yourself close to your categories, challenging yourself with understanding other categories, just a great source of one, opportunity identification, but two, ensuring that what you're suggesting is landing. But another thought, Nathan, you mentioned about going out into superstores and visiting those stores there. So I'm going to go off on a slight tangent. This was nicely prompted by the question from Fiona the other day. I'm not sure if she's here today. If she is, then thank you for this. We had a conversation about this earlier today. Her challenge to me was, okay, how do we manage various different channels that exist? Because actually it tends to be our effort is put into, your point, Nathan, our big superstores, our hyperstores, and what have you. Yet each retailer has various different channels, right from its kind of small local convenience channels to its online channel to its superstores, hyperstores, megastores, however they choose to clarify it. The challenge, again, could be a way, or so another way of looking at it could be, I'm going to introduce, so I think the majority will be familiar with KPIs, key performance indicators, our targets. Typically, I see this and this going in hand. I'll agree, target is our KPI, it's what we're aiming to achieve. So if we have a KPI for our category, we could then have various KRAs. Typically one here, multiple here. The KRA, key result area. Let me explain this in the same way I did with the conversation with Fiona earlier, was around key result areas. I'm going to pick a sport, I'm going to pick football, but it could be any sport. Each football team will have a KPI. Let's imagine it's winning the league. They will have various KRAs that sit below that. So for the goalkeeper, it could be clean sheets, which is not letting any goals in the net. For defenders, it could be balls cleared out of the box, or out of the danger zone near their own goal. For midfielders, it could be passes completed up to the strikers at the front. And for our strikers at the front, it could be goals scored. Those are the KRAs, so the key result areas that will all link into achieving our KPI. We could come at it a different way from a channel perspective, and actually, our different channels could be our individual KRAs. What do we want our superstores to achieve? What do we want our online presence to achieve? What do we want our small local convenience stores to achieve? Why the opportunity size may be very, very different. Big opportunities may sit in the superstores, small opportunities in the convenience stores. They all play their part, in which case they all then need to be, maybe, for want of a better word, held accountable for achieving the overall KPI. So when you're in stores, it's not just about visiting the hyperstores, big stores. It could be about visiting some of the smaller, more local convenience stores, which could then send us on a whole other journey to go visit our local fresh produce greengrocers, butchers, smaller stores, independents, just to get a feel for what those guys are doing to allow us to then take inspiration and see if we can apply that to a wider format. We'll pause there for a second. KPIs, KRAs. Nathan, as my temperature check, is that making sense?
Absolutely, and I think the key thing that we've seen in businesses is not having too many KPIs. There is maximum kind of 3, and you will find that a lot of your KRAs, and other KPIs will actually fall into those kind of 3 columns anyway. But if you don't, if you're not focusing up here, these are the increment, the buttons and levers that you can pull and push that cause that KPI to be here. So just making sure you've got the right numbers in the right places so you can take the right action and not just confuse yourself.
I agree. It comes back to kind of day one, we were talking about that stuff there. Ideally, it's one target up here. Achieve that, move on to another. If you've got multiple targets up here, and for any business, multiple targets become confusing because the effort you put in becomes diluted. You have one crystal clear, smart target, and then know the component parts that make up to achieving that. We can put time, and effort, and resource into the right places. And if we're thinking our biggest opportunities could be in our convenience stores, at least we then know that, and we're not wasting our time over here.
Agreed. I think about where I am locally. I can walk down the road less than 10 minutes, and I've got an independent greengrocers. I've got Tesco's Express. I've got Co-op. I've got Aldi. I've got one of the small satellite branches of Aldi just up the road. And it's just about getting that viewpoint where I can get a cross section of outlets within the space of 60 minutes. I can see exactly what all those categories are doing for me.
Yeah, and it feels like I'm conducting time away from my desks, away from our inbox, but yet trying it, you'd be surprised exactly how much insight can be drawn from it. There's a brilliant story. I don't know the original route or the source of it. What I do know was that McDonald's considered once selling pizzas through their restaurants. And one of the suppliers was lucky enough to be the pizza supplier, but one of the requirements from McDonald's was that the MD of the company had to go and work in one of the restaurants. So he duly obliged, very chuffed that he got the contract to supply them pizzas. It was a trial for McDonald's as to whether that could be a route that they may branch into. And the MD's in store and he's brilliant pizza. Like, can I go and do a spell at the drive-through? Yeah, no problems. And there he was. Oh, pizza orders come through, loving life today. Gets his pizza box and realised they couldn't get it through the drive-through window. Couldn't get it through. And it was one of those moments that you would never have got there, that this box was just, tip it, I'm going to get it through my window, get it through your car window. One of those moments going, why didn't you know this before? That then allowed them to maybe change some up or consider some box size, but in point that one insight would never have come, or maybe have come far too late down the route of launch of that particular area. Not sure, maybe that's the reason why they don't sell pizzas now. Let's stick to our Big Macs and our cheese baby there.
Yeah, that's good. What's the time now? Okay, we're hitting 18 minutes past 1. Good. So we looked at KPIs, we looked at KRAs, we've looked at where we are and kind of getting to that point of landing those opportunities and getting ready to cycle that up. The one thing I wanted to touch on in just a few minutes, I've got it in front of me, is that stretch sheet, Andy, because I feel like we're getting to that point where we've looked at what the target is, we've gone through this process, and we're starting to get to that point where we can actually kind of push the boundaries of what we're doing. So I think it's appropriate to talk about that.
Right, let's get it up. So yeah, so this was some content that we've got some time to share. It was something that we were looking to do yesterday, so I'm glad Nathan brought this back to life. So this is a template we can share with you. If you'd like a copy, like and subscribe in the box, so to speak. Drop your name in there and we'll email it over to you. It's about, again, preparation, and we all know the importance of this. So reasonably simple template to fill out. Situation. This is about what you're looking to, about who's going to be there at your meetings. It's about setting yourself up for success initially. We can fill out those boxes. We've got clarity on what we're looking to achieve. We can then move into the time that we've got. So our time could be how long we've got to present, how long we need to prepare for. I'm going to give some time around Q&A here. And I think I mentioned it the other day, but working on that rule of thumb of 3 to 4 minutes per slide, and we've got maybe half an hour to present. We're only talking about putting together maximum 10 killer slides, not the usual 50, 60 that we've historically gone in with. The next area is about the result. This is about the result you want to get more in the long term. We know that you don't go in, have one meeting, and get everything you want and job to do. But this is about achieving, and I'm saying, your end in mind. You will have a number of meetings all looking to achieve the same thing and having an absolute end in mind. And as Stephen Covey says, those are fans of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, everything's created twice. Once in the mental, second in the physical. You understand what the end in mind is, everything you do then works towards achieving that. Second part, or the next part, E, expectations. Expectations for that individual meeting. What's going to be desirable? What's going to be ideal? What do you want to get out at the end of that meeting? If you're going in there with your expectations that the buyer's going to go, yep, let's sign that off now. I love the price. I don't need any further information. Yep, that's highly profitable for you, not so much for me. Let's do it. You know, realistically, that's not going to happen. There's going to be some further negotiation. There's going to be some further explanation. But you can at least set out what you think your own manageable expectations are. Making sense? Nod from Nathan. Brilliant. Okay, next thing is 3 key things. What are your 3 bumper stickers? What are the 3 things that you want to have the buyer remember? And it could be that the buyer goes again, you know what, those guys have got a handle on promotions. That's going to generate me another 100 million. Those guys have got 3 awesome products that we're going to launch in the next 3 months. That's rock and roll. It's, again, having clarity on what the big, important things are that the buyer's going to take away, as opposed to that. I talked about it again the other day, having that list of 40 or 50 recommendations, all of which are never going to happen. It's going with 3 killer things that are on must-have. The next part is the character. Who are you? And always be yourself, but who and how are you going to present yourself? And having good clarity on what that looks like beforehand. What I mean by that, and it's coming back to sort of the Herman stuff we talked about yesterday. How are you going to tailor how you communicate, how you present, how you interact by being more mindful of the audience? For example, my default probably would be to stand here and talk quite monotone and be a bit dull. I don't really fancy making eye contact with any of you, just don't really like it. We know we're running a webinar, it's online, we've got to be a bit animated, bring it to life, make you guys feel as enthusiastic as we are. So in which case, bringing that enthusiasm, hopefully, leaks through to you guys and you guys get as passionate as we are about capital management. So it's about your character. Last one is about how. So this is really about how you're going to present. Our default, of course, is PowerPoint. We go in, open up our laptops, I'll get our hard packs out. Actually, can we do some stuff differently? Can we have various different levels of various different formats? Can we do some stuff on boards, or can we go in with just a single one-pager, or can we go in with nothing and just actually talk and ask questions and interact and then summarize at the end? And the challenge is about how you can present differently to differentiate yourself from all your competitors that are still going in with their PowerPoints. Sometimes just going in with a couple of, let's say, A2 foam boards can really bring stuff to life and just help the buyer go, oh, thank goodness, I haven't got to sit through another PowerPoint presentation, or maybe for right now, I haven't got to sit through another Zoom meeting of 3 hours of slides. It's about considering all that stuff differently. This template allows you to stretch your thinking. It allows you to do that preparation, and all with a view to setting yourself up for success. Okay, as usual, going at a fair pace. Nathan, there's my temperature check.
It's good, and it leads me in 2 ways, because yesterday I was watching a webinar about how to land a TED talk. So it's something that I'm really inspired to do, is actually get myself on a TED stage and talk about some of the things I'm passionate about. And the man that was leading it turned around and said, the idea is one thing, but if you haven't got the energy behind it to actually push that idea through, no organizer of a TED event is going to bat an eyelid. They're just going to cross you off, and they're not going to move it forward. It doesn't matter how good the idea is. And he was saying that the head of the the CEO of the World Food Fund or Food Bank or whatever it is, World Food Bank, had applied 49 times before he actually got accepted to do a TED Talk. And this guy's charismatic and talking to huge audiences about great ideas, but it just wasn't the right idea for those people. So it takes time to do these, and you've got to come with that energy to land it. The second direction it takes me though is then looking at the magic pill from negotiation. So I'm aware I'm sharing the screen at the moment, but again, it's just talking about who you're bringing to that conversation, how you're positioning yourself, and to stop doing that. The amount of importance, you know, what energy, what characters, what demeanor do you want to bring to that conversation to support the dialogue that you're creating?
Absolutely. I think I refer to this as my monkey in the cage, and bear with me on this one a little bit. Story, Victor Kiam, when he first started in his early career, was selling toothpaste, and he was invited in to go and sell his toothpaste along with a number of other suppliers, and he went, oh, okay, I've got good toothpaste, they've got good toothpaste. I've got good prices, they've got good prices. And he realized he had nothing that really differentiated himself from his competitors. And that is the reality for all of us as suppliers or suppliers we work with. They're all absolutely brilliant with absolutely brilliant people. I'm sure their prices are all awesomely competitive. But what is that point of difference? So Victor decided to differentiate himself. And the story goes that he went in with a cage with a monkey in it, and halfway through the meeting, the cage is open, the monkey's out, papers flying absolutely everywhere. It's all a bit chaotic. This is the presentation, monkey back in the cage, off he goes. A couple of weeks later, he gets the phone call. Congratulations, we'd like to award you the contract to supply us toothpaste. Fantastic, that's great news. Thank you very much, I really appreciate it. Well, I've got you, I'd just ask for a bit of feedback. What made you award me the contract? Simple answer was, you were more memorable than your competitors. Exactly that. May well be a little bit of poetic license in that story, and why I wouldn't suggest any kind of caged animal is taken into any kind of meeting with any supermarket. It is about considering what your metaphoric monkey in the cage is in order to differentiate yourself from your competitors, to stand out, and importantly, still maintaining your credibility. Absolutely, and whether you love him or hate him, Bill Gates did a very similar thing in his TED Talk when he opened the jar on the mosquitoes when he was talking about malaria. It made people think, and it got people responding. Whether there was mosquitoes in that jar or not, who knows? Doesn't matter. You're hitting certain psychological hot cognitions, which then trigger certain different responses and reactions. It's understanding what those hot cognitions are that put you in front of those people again and again and again. Conscious of time, crikey, it is 1:27. I hope this is useful. Everyone who's here, who's attended, thank you very much for being here. It's so very appreciated. What has been useful from this week's Sticky Learning Lunches for you? We'd love to know right now. So this is an open question to the whole audience. What has been useful for you today and from this week? And also, what questions have you got for Andy? So fire those into the questions box. What's been useful? What's been valuable? What questions have you got right now? Let us know. And while we're talking about that, just to let you know, while we were talking, I went and found the article for the negotiation magic pill. So that's got some information there and just ideas that will help you to enter into negotiation conversations in a very different mindset to get you even better results. So that's already there. Now, while those questions are coming through, bear with me because I am just going to pick up some extra bits here and get those into the chat box. As I said earlier, I did say make sure if you haven't signed up for Monday's session even, now is the time to go and have a look and get yourself registered for Monday and also for the leadership development sessions as well. Also, I've just dropped the link in there for the Catman category management coaching cards. So all the stuff that we've covered through this week and we're going to be rounding up on Monday are all included there in the coaching cards as well. Huge, phenomenal value. We've got a multitude of decks now for asking the right questions in the right scenarios. These are the category management ones. They're £5 for the pack. Takes you through each stage of this funnel and helps you to ask the right questions of yourself. So if you haven't got your pack, now is the time to go and do this. Always good to remember, get into store and to understand the retailer and their objectives before creating pages of PowerPoint analysis. Absolutely agreed, Michaela.
And as much as Andy loves his data and his analysis, you know, it's getting the fair and the right and the reasonable combination of those things. From this week, the power of and also awareness of challenge reality in my head. Tell me more, Colin. You know, have you picked up some more awareness of the challenges and realities that you have in your own head when it comes to regards to category management? And how is this helping? How is this training course we've just delivered in this space helping you to push beyond those? Really, really important. And I'm going to go and get one more link. Bear with me.
Good multitasking there, Nathan.
Terrible at it. Never going to work.
So I'm just standing here enjoying the heat of the room as the windows are all shut and we're just sweltering now.
Well, it's scientifically proven that multitasking doesn't exist. Meant that the difference between what's in my head and the reality in the store, absolutely, Colin. The difference between what you think in your head and what is actually the reality out there are worlds apart. And again, even if you go into the store with your own set of eyes, you're still seeing it from what's behind your own set of eyes. And you've got your own biases of what you think is right and wrong in that store. And it's super important that we're actually getting a cross section and we're triangulating our thinking.
I think that's super important. And for me, that's where we kind of develop those hypotheses that then need to be tested with a robust sample of people. We've seen it so many times when supplier goes in and it says to the buyer, look, we've got this new product, it's absolutely terrific, you're going to love it. And the buyer goes, I like yellow, yellow, not my favourite colour, not interested. It's about saying, actually, in the most politest way, it's not about whether you like yellow or not. All of our customers, all of your customers, 90% that we asked said yellow is absolutely fantastic. And trying to head that stuff off first, we don't make it about individuals' personal preferences. We all have them, neither right nor wrong. We've got to make sure we're persuading our buyers, persuading the person who's making that buying decision by backing it up with all of the relevant and appropriate information to what our shoppers are saying and telling us that they actually want out.
Absolutely. And last but not least, before we close off today, if you would like Andy to speak to you, to speak to your team, to speak to your account managers about category management to increase the number of opportunities that you've got and getting them landed, I have just put the link in there for the virtual classrooms. That will help you to start an initial conversation with Andy Palmer and help you to expand what it is you're doing and the slice of the pie that you've got in all directions. Getting a bigger slice, but also getting a larger slice. And I mean kind of the expansion, not just the slice out of that pie as well. So super important. If you know someone that needs that support, now is the time to click on that link and start that conversation. Andy, thanks very much for today. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. We'll see you on Monday.
On Monday, and everyone else who's watching now, thanks very much for today. Really appreciate your time, and we'll see you on Monday as well. Have a lovely rest of the week and enjoy your weekend.